The dynamic placement test. Instant, accurate, reliable. We're honoured to have been shortlisted as a finalist for the 2021 e-Assessment Awards in the Best International Implementation category. In this presentation, we'll run through the project for which we were nominated. Before we start our presentation, we wanted to give you a little background on us. ClarityEnglish, based in Hong Kong, is the publisher of online English programs and the dynamic placement test, which is the focus of our presentation. Atlas English is the UK arm of the company. We handle distribution and customer support in Europe and, in some special cases, a little further afield. During this presentation, we'll first look at the Syrian refugee crisis and the context in which the testing project took place. We'll then look at the implementation of the test in more detail, and finally, we'll look at the outcomes of the project. Let's jump straight into the background and scenario. As I'm sure you know, the Syrian refugee crisis started in 2011, following a violent crackdown on demonstrations which started a civil war. A decade later, it remains the world's largest refugee crisis. The majority of the 6.6 million Syrian refugees fled to the neighbouring countries of Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Egypt. One of the many challenges the refugees faced was difficulty accessing education, and in particular, higher education. We can see the extent of the issue by comparing the rate of enrolment to higher education. The global average is around 37%. Amongst Syrian refugees, this was as low as 3%. Although there were many different elements preventing refugees from accessing higher education, language barriers were a key obstacle. I'm going to read out these two quotes from the UNHCR. Certificates, languages, and cost comprise some of the biggest barriers to higher education. And the academic demands of higher education call for advanced language skills. It can take months or years to master a new language to this level. This is where the HOPES project stepped in. Funded by the EU, HOPES is a consortium of 4 then EU agencies: the British Council, NUFIC, DAAD, and Campus France. It was set up with the aim of providing better access to higher education opportunities for Syrian refugees. Our dynamic placement test was implemented in 2 distinct phases of the HOPES project. The first took place in 2018, and the second in 2020. The first phase was led by the British Council and aimed to put 8,000 students through an English programme with the objective of helping them improve their proficiency by 1 CEFR level. The second phase, run by DAAD after HOPES had evolved to HOPES LEB, aimed to test and certify the level of 750 candidates affected by IELTS and other test cancellations due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The first phase of the project was split into 3 distinct steps. First, all students would take a placement test to determine their starting level and to place them in a suitable English class for their level. Secondly, the students would take a 100-hour English course, and finally, an exit test to determine their English improvement. The dynamic placement test was selected as the placement test for step 1, and this will be the focus of the presentation. Given the difficult circumstances in which testing was due to take place, the project faced a number of challenges. Firstly, administrative. Test administrators were unfamiliar with online testing and the administrative system and had specific needs that required customized solutions. Secondly, there were regional challenges. The relatively low English level of candidates presented operational challenge. Communicating test details was a particular concern. Finally, the most significant challenges were technical ones. As the test needed to be administered remotely, it had to be accessible on a wide range of devices. Additionally, the test had to be administered online, but virtually all test takers faced unreliable or intermittent internet connections. In fact, a different placement test was initially trialled for this project, but had to be abandoned as the technical challenges proved to be too great. DPT was subsequently selected, and we were able to develop customized solutions to make the project a success. We will explore these in the following sections. In the second phase of the project, which took place in 2020, it had a slightly different aim: to test and certify the level of 750 candidates. The same challenges remained as in Phase 1, but the administrative and technical challenges were exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. There were a few further challenges that stem from the different aim, namely the generation and distribution of DPT certificates to all test takers. The administrative challenges of the project were the most straightforward to overcome. We relied on three key elements to address these. Firstly, training and support of the customer to upskill them on the test and administrative system. This involved webinars, support materials, and trial run-throughs by the Clarity and Atlas English teams. Secondly, we adapted DPT to the administrative requirements of the project. For example, the creation of customized reporting to satisfy the client's funding requirements. Lastly, we established a systematic testing process to make the project as simple and straightforward as possible for the test administrators. The most significant regional challenge was the operational obstacles caused by the low English level of test takers. This was addressed and overcome in three main ways. Firstly, the test familiarization and instruction section of the test was translated into Arabic and enabled as a test administration option. Here we can see the test familiarization section in English and the translated version in Arabic. Secondly was the creation of a video guide, which was also translated into Arabic and provided to the test administrators to share with students. Lastly, we developed customizable welcome emails that test administrators could automatically send out to all test takers, sharing all the relevant information in one quick and easy step. As mentioned, the technical challenges proved the most significant in this project. The first of these was device availability. Candidates had to take the test remotely but did not have access to a wide range of devices, typically only mobile. Fortunately, the dynamic placement test can be taken on any device: desktop, laptop, tablet, or mobile, so this was quite easily addressed. A more significant technical challenge was the unreliable and intermittent internet connection that almost all candidates faced. Here's a quote from one of the test administrators, Hala Ahmed, who said, "We're working with universities and areas which don't have a sophisticated technical infrastructure." This involved a more complex solution in which an offline mode of the dynamic placement test was developed. The test's offline mode allows test takers to take DPT without an active internet connection, and thus provided a robust fallback option in these challenging testing conditions.
Let's now look at the project outcomes. The objectives of each phase of the project were quite straightforward. In Phase 1, test all 8,000 students and place them in the correct CEFR band for their class. In Phase 2, test all 750 candidates and accurately certify their English level. From a quantitative perspective, it's quite straightforward to evaluate the success of the projects in meeting these objectives. In Phase 1, the target was met. In the end, 8,514 students were put through the English course, 6% above the goal, and DPT was effectively used to test all of these students. In Phase 2, the target was met to a certain extent. 673 students of the 750 selected completed DPT. That's a completion rate of around 90%. And each of them received a DPT certificate. While we would have preferred a 100% completion rate, 90% was viewed as a success by the client given the challenging conditions in which test administration was taking place. More difficult to evaluate, but perhaps more importantly, is whether these objectives were met from a qualitative perspective. Were all 8,000 students placed in the correct level? Were the certificates accurate? To evaluate this, we can look at two factors. Firstly, test inputs. DPT has a robust adaptive test design, which is proven to accurately place test takers in the correct level. Test content is created by TELC language tests, and all items go through rigorous analysis to ensure they are testing at the correct level. Sophisticated question types such as sentence reconstruction and word placement make cheating or guessing a lot more difficult than a traditional multiple choice test. And our anomaly tracker flags any suspicious test taker activity to the administrator. A second important way to evaluate the qualitative success of the project is by the feedback of teachers and test administrators. Ideally, we would have data to analyse, such as how many students were moved to a different level after starting their course. But given the fast-moving and challenging conditions in which the project took place, unfortunately we were not able to gather this data. What we do have is positive feedback from teachers and administrators in both phases of the project that DPT accurately assessed their students' English level. Perhaps the clearest indication of accuracy and reliability of the test is that after its successful use in 2018, it was selected again for the second phase of the project in 2020. Here is a quote from Hope's scholarship manager, Rania, who says that the test is easy to use, assesses accurately and reliably. While both projects successfully met their objectives, we did take key learnings from each, which we have used to make other international implementations of DPT more effective. The importance of the offline mode meant that we changed the way it's presented in the admin panel to make it as easy as possible for administrators to make use of this when setting up the test. Secondly, we're able to generate detailed and informative reports to help clients understand how test takers are engaging with the test and accessing the materials. This can help them engage with their students most effectively. Finally, the convenience of video guides. The guides for test takers received such positive feedback from students and administrators, and it proved much easier to follow than walk-through documents. We've now rolled out a series of tutorials for administrators and test takers that's being translated to other languages to make international implementation as easy and as convenient as possible. Does it sound like DPT might be a good fit for your institution? Visit the Dynamic Placement Test website for more information and to try out the test yourself.